Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to myDNAhealth's live webinar about the DNA Comprehensive Panel. It's scheduled to last an hour, so it's 6:30 now, so we should be finished by 7:30. Hopefully it's going to be an interesting webinar. It's been fascinating putting the webinar together, and it's based on conversations we'd had with a lot of practitioners. I certainly have had a lot of those conversations myself. We've been talking about nutrigenomics for the last couple of years, and it's a subject that's highly topical. But we're going to step further, and we'll now cover the emerging science called epigenetics. And Dr. Shania Lee will take you through that this evening using case studies as well. So just a little about the presenters this evening. So I'm Bernie Williams. I head up the practitioner support and marketing. I've met a number of you that are on this webinar this evening. I'm one of the founding partners of myDNAhealth and also helped to develop the first DNA test panel, which we launched in 2014 together with the Nutrigenomics supplement range. I see myself as the link between our R&D science team and you, the practitioners, and we try and listen to you and respond so we can actually create the right products, the right DNA test panels that will help you treat your patients. Dr. Shania Lee has been part of our R&D team from the very beginning. Shania's career as a doctor in complementary and alternative medicine started in 2000, which abiliside her own personal health scares, stands her in good stead as a functional medicine and nutrigenomics clinician. So Shania is one of a few nutrigenomic epigenetic practicing clinicians. She was one of the first to start using genetic testing to treat her patients. So we've got a lot to learn from Shania, and she will certainly be taking you through one of the client case studies this evening. So moving on to the agenda. So we're going to be covering this over 4 parts. We've got a lot of slides to get through this evening, so if you can bear with us, that'll be great. Part 1 is we're going to have a quick refresher about epigenetics and nutrigenomics, a brief overview of the new comprehensive panel. Then in part 2, we're going to be doing the clinical case study using the comprehensive panel results. Plus, we're going to hear from Shania about additional tests that she recommends using alongside the DNA results. Then in part 3, I'm going to be taking over and doing a live demo of the practitioner portal. So to show you how you actually access your client results and all the technical support collateral in the portal. And then we'll end the session with Q&As. During the session, please post any questions you have. So you'll see on the left panel, you'll see where you can type in a question. You can type it just to the presenters, or you can type it to everyone. We've got the practitioner support team on hand this evening, and they will try and address those questions. If they don't manage to cover all of them, we will certainly get back to you after the session as well. And before anybody asks me, yes, we are recording the session, and we will be sending the recording out together with all the handouts. Now, before we start, we've just got a quick poll. So if we can just launch it. Thank you. So we've got a question up there, and if you don't mind answering this question, what results matter the most when treating your client? There we go. SNP results, case and family history, lifestyle questionnaires, symptoms, all equally important. So if we can all just quickly vote, I'll keep it up there for a couple of seconds. Thank you. Okay, that's great.
I'd like to say,
so yeah, we see all equally important.
Really
Great
like
results, everyone. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Shania, who's going to be running the next session. Thank you. Over to you, Shania.
I really want to hope to demystify the results that some of you have already seen and experienced. And I'd also like to introduce a few of the panels to those of you who haven't used myDNAhealth yet. I'm going to be presenting a case study that I prepared, and I'm going to illustrate to you that the information that we give is extremely comprehensive, and that DNA is an excellent foundation for each case because the DNA will never change, but the client's behavior may, and that will affect gene expression, and that affects their future health. So it's extremely valuable. So the analogy that I use to describe where genetic testing fits into a program is exactly that of building a house from scratch. So you buy a piece of land and you get it assessed by a quantity surveyor. And this, in our speak, is the initial consultation where you as the practitioner assess the client and you get a feel of their land, so to speak. You then, if you're building a house, draw up plans and a blueprint that build around areas that are potentially going to be problematic on the land that you've bought, things that need additional support. And in our speak, this is where the DNA comes in. It's the blueprint and the foundation. So it's the instructions where to focus on in terms of supporting the predispositions your client has. You then build on the foundation, and this is where you treat the gut and ensure healthy sleep patterns and educate your client about food first. You then build the walls with additional supplementation and reinforcing good habits. Because you're already aware of the potential problems that you're building, or your home that you live in 24/7 is your body. Because you're aware of those susceptibilities, you will prepare for them, and you'll add more waterproofing in the areas that are prone to damp, or you'll support the areas that are nutritionally needing support through the genetics. So that's the analogy I use. I use the same analogy when I'm talking to my patients about the patients that's with the CE at the end, they need while they're recovering. Because building any sort of house requires time, planning, and patience. So I'm going to read out that Nathan Price quote because I love it. Interpreting genomic data enables patients to take charge of their health by understanding and controlling their risk factors in their daily lives. So for the benefit of those who've not attended any previous presentations or workshops, I'm going to go through some of the basic terminology before I go into the case study itself, so you don't get lost in the terminology. In the case study, I'm going to try and demonstrate to you that you don't treat specific SNPs like they're a disease, because I see people doing that often, and I'd like to steer you away from doing that. And if it's the only statement that I get across tonight, it's don't treat the SNPs, treat the patient. You treat their presenting symptoms, you look at their basic foundation, and you work with that. Okay, so what is a SNP? A SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism, and that's the difference in a single DNA building block called a nucleotide pair. We have 4 potential letters in the DNA. They're adenosine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine, or A, G, T, and C. You inherit 1 letter from your mom and 1 from your dad when we're looking at the genes that we look at. So if you fall into the average of the population, so their code is fairly average, and you fall into that, that's called a wild type. So you've got 1 copy from your mom, 1 copy from your dad, and they're both average, so that's the wild type. We put that as green in the report. So I'm going to take a pair as an example. So I don't know if you need a pencil and paper to sort of bear with me on this one or keep up with me on this one. I'm going to give an example of the wild type. In other words, the average of the population is CC. So that's essentially the normal variant. Now, if however your mom decided that she was going to give you, well, she didn't decide, that was fate, sorry about that. She gave you a different letter, say a T where you should have had a C, and your dad gave you the C that should have been there in the first place, then that's what we call heterozygous single nucleotide polymorphism. And we show that in the report as yellow. If both your parents gave you a T when you should have had a C, then this is called a homozygous polymorphism, and we show this as red. Now, I need to point out to you straight away that red doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means far from the norm. Okay, it's very different from the norm. Some cases it's good, some cases it's bad. So it's important to know that most SNPs don't have an effect on health or development, but some have been identified that can predict responses to drugs or susceptibility to environmental toxins, which these days are rife, and also the risk of developing certain disease, the operative word there being risk. We test 32 genes that are influenced by diet, lifestyle, and nutrition, along with questionnaires, and these assist in determining whether the genes are expressing or not. Okay, so I'd like you to think of a hypothetical client's results, and you see in their results that they are homozygous MTHFR. That means they've got 2 copies that are furthest from the norm, and they would be represented as red in our report. What this means is that they potentially, and I'm going to stress the word potentially there is a 70% reduction in their methylation pathway function. But this person that I'm talking about eats a pound of leafy green vegetables a day, they don't drink alcohol, they sleep out 8 hours a night, they feel great, and their questionnaire results are excellent. Plus, you've done an organic acid urine test, which we'll talk about a bit later, and it shows good methylation. So I'm going to ask you, and you can ponder on this for a while, is do you still need to treat this MTHFR SNP with methylfolate supplementation, or is their lifestyle supporting their susceptibility? So we'll bring it up again later and go through that. Right, we also have insertion and deletion genes. Now what this essentially means is instead of there being a misspell that the gene is either there or not there. In our test, that would be the GST or the glutathione responsible genes. And I'm going to give an example of a case where somebody has 2 GST deletions and the rest of their SNPs are kind of normal, average, good. Their questionnaire results, however, are fantastic. They look after themselves like nobody I've seen. Their toxic questionnaire comes to maybe 5 or 6 out of 10. Their sleep questionnaire is excellent. They're within their healthy BMI. Their overall results will actually show as being pretty good. And the reason for this is that they are already supporting those GST deletions through their diet and lifestyle. So how you support GST deletions is through eating cruciferous and alien vegetables. So if that person's already doing that and living a toxin-free life, do they need to be supplementing further? No, not really, because they're already supporting it through their diet and lifestyle. That's the point I'm going to stress. Okay. Nutrigenomics, this is the study of the effects of food and food constituents on gene expression. This, in other words, there are foods that can turn good genes on and bad genes off. This is great for anybody who's in the field of nutritional medicine because it means that we've got fantastic control. Nutrigenomics is essentially research focusing on identifying and understanding the molecular level interactions between nutrition and the genome. Basically, it's a means to optimize nutrition with respect to a subject's genotype and is the very basis of personalized nutrition. It's the foundation, that blueprint foundation on which you will eventually build a fantastic, sturdy structure. Epigenetics, the catchphrase of the millennium, I think. Epigenetic influence, that's everything that's outside of ourselves that can turn our genes on or off. And it basically means that there are signals that we have from our external being that affect our gene expression. Things like food, thoughts, sleep, and exercise. Ideally, us as practitioners, we want to turn the genes of longevity and wellness and vitality on and turn off the genes for aging and cell death. That would be the ideal situation. And doing that through food is simple enough. Sometimes some supplements as well. So the good news is that your genetic profile is no longer your destiny because these epigenetic influences are things that you have control over. You and your client, and I would call them my patient, but every person in your life has absolute control over these epigenetic influences, or at least their influences on their body. So you can change your gene expression by the things you think, the things you say, the things you do, the food you choose to eat or avoid. Most importantly, these epigenetic tags can last for generations. So what you are doing now is affecting your grandchildren's health, not just your own. The science of epigenetics says fate is not written in stone. I love that. Even if you have genetic predispositions, we are no longer the victims of heredity. So that essentially says that we're no longer doomed by our genes. We are the masters, literally, of our own health and well-being. And again, I'm going to stress at the bottom there, don't treat the SNP, treat the person. Your epigenome is literally like the beautiful grandmother's vintage dress that you can wear or have altered to fit you better. So clients often say, it's not my fault, it's in my genes. Or they used to. They're not allowed to say that anymore because that expression is no longer relevant. I'm going to remind you of that quote from slide 4 by Nathan Price of the Institute of Functional Medicine, where he goes, interpreting genomic data enables the patient to take charge of their health by understanding and controlling the risk factors of their daily lives. You put the responsibility straight back into the patient's hands or the client's hands. And I'm going to speak as a person who's been in practice for 20 years, and I've been using genetic testing for almost half that. In my practice, I started on myself and worked on my patients thereafter. And I'd say the most valuable influence of running genetic tests is the change in behavior once a person realizes that they've been putting themselves at risk. So as a crazy example, like it seems logical to every one of us, right, that smoking's bad. But you can take someone who is adamant that they want to smoke and you do a genetic test on them and they have the ApoE4 variant with a GST deletion, and if that means nothing to you, we'll get to that. You can show them that they actually have more of a risk from the toxins they're putting into themselves than the average person does. And it's often a huge motivating factor for people to stop smoking, or in the case of eating too much sugar, so that they can modify their behavior to improve their health. Your genes are not your destiny. They're just a starting place, and it is everything that you do from that starting place. It's the choices you make that change your gene expression. I really hope that this message is getting through now, that we don't treat SNPs. We treat the people who have them. So let's go back to that MTHFR homozygous thing that I brought up earlier. So let's just say you're a homozygous MTHFR and you drink alcohol regularly and you stress a lot and you don't sleep well. You might need to support that SNP with methylfolate, but ideally you should modify your behavior. And again, if you're that person I mentioned right at the beginning who is homozygous MTHFR but is giving their genes support through diet and lifestyle, you might not need to take supplementation and treatment. You might just actually be supporting yourself through your lifestyle. And as practitioners, I'd like to encourage all of you to get into the habit of checking gene expression before treating the SNPs. And I'm going to show you an example when I get to the case study of how you can do that. So some of you are probably wondering, okay, how does this fit into a nutritional practice? So I practice functional medicine, and that tree on the right-hand side is, if you haven't seen it before, is the functional medicine tree, as far as I'm concerned. And you'll see where I've inserted the red arrow. Genetic testing falls into the root system of assessing the cause of disease, that root cause that we all look for. And genes are not assessed on their own. They're assessed along with the mental, emotional, and spiritual influences, as well as experiences, attitudes, and beliefs. And then if you look further down, there are all the other environmental factors: sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress, etc., etc. So when we're assessing the very basics of a new client who has come in to see us, we look at what are called antecedents. And those are the things that came before the moments of illness. The triggers, those are those, oh my goodness, I haven't been well since that moment. The mediators, and those are the things that keep the disease state happening. So for an example, a smoker, that's a definite mediator. Genetics would fall into the antecedents and must be taken into the picture along with all the other antecedents, and then the triggers and the mediators. All of this is part of your assessment and blueprint design. One of the issues that comes out when people start using genetic testing is that they see it as a standalone test. In other words, client comes in, has a whole bunch of symptoms, and the clinician goes, I'm going to do a genetic test. I'm going to find all these, let's just, for the want of the better word, call them red SNPs. And for every red SNP, there is a treatment. And this is unfortunately not the case. It's not a standalone test. It's a blueprint. Not all of those red SNPs are going to be expressing. So you use the genetic test as a guideline. It needs to have you use additional testing to check the gene expressing. You then use those test results along with the DNA and, most importantly, the person's story. In other words, what is this person presenting with? What is their background? What was their life story? What got them to this point? You use all of those things in combination to determine whether the genetic variants that you're looking at are relevant in this particular case, because you'll probably find that some come up red that aren't really relevant for you treating the presenting symptoms at the time. So just because somebody has a SNP doesn't mean that it's expressing, and it certainly doesn't mean that it needs to be treated. So this one SNP, one treatment, that's very allopathic. We don't do that. We treat the whole picture. Right. So we have our body receiving inputs from the environment, and as an integrated system, it responds through gene expression. If it's puzzling, I'd like to clear the puzzle up by showing you just where genes fit into this rather large picture. Okay? We need to take everything into account as practitioners. So should you use your genetic results as a standalone test? Personally, I say absolutely not. You can't treat a genetic report without understanding which of the SNPs are actually expressing or not. The person's symptoms will give you some of the clues, but the rest is required through additional testing. So I'm going to give you a practical example where you've done a test and you've discovered incidentally, in other words, you weren't looking for this particular SNP, but it pops up in the test, that this client has both homozygous SNPs for HFE. If you don't know what that is, it's the gene that predisposes you to hemochromatosis. So this person obviously has a high risk of developing hemochromatosis, but may or may not have it. So how do you assess this? Not really easily done through assessing their symptoms, because the symptoms of hemochromatosis are fairly vague. So what you need to do is, fairly obviously, you do an iron panel with ferritin. And if this gene is expressing, you'll see an elevated iron in ferritin. If this gene is not expressing, for whatever reason, it's been turned off and the iron levels are low or normal, you don't treat it. You don't send them off for therapeutic phlebotomy in case maybe they potentially will. No. You treat it if it's expressing. In other words, you do all the things you need to do if that iron is high. But if the iron is normal and they have that predisposition, what you would do as a practitioner is you would adjust your personalized nutritional program to include supplements that have less or no iron in them. And then you would definitely monitor that client's blood regularly. They have a predisposition. It doesn't mean that gene is expressing. So if the gene is expressing, they'll be retaining iron to their detriment. And if the gene isn't expressing, they won't be, and you'll be able to pick that up with the additional testing. Right, so we understand at myDNAhealth that it's not just the genes. I think I might be getting this across now, but it's a whole bunch of things. It's the environment, it's how the person feels. And we developed this comprehensive DNA panel. I'm going to show you, this is one of our avatars. Just for ease, I'm going to go with the methylation cycle. It's right at the top there. And as you can see, we've listed the genes that we look at. There's a few of them there, but we also look at toxicity and the sleep questionnaires. And then algorithmically, we put all the answers and the numbers together, and we come up with a total number. And that's where you'll get whether the person is actually in a mild, moderate, or severe state with methylation. So it's a combination of not just the genes, but how are they actually feeling? What are they actually doing that might induce an expression or reduce an expression? Down at the bottom on the right-hand side, we have the estrogen imbalance, where we have a whole bunch of genes, and then we also look at toxicity, weight and cortisol, and estrogen. So obviously we'd like to know what their predispositions are and how they're actually doing at that moment in time. Down at the bottom here, we have the different nutrients that we check and the different genes that we're looking in. You'll see that the fat or the iron overabsorption is the HFE. There are two of them. They kind of both have to be homozygous for it to be a real issue. They let you know. very briefly touch on this slide, because this is the point of this webinar is not for you to go, these are the genes, this is what they do. In this webinar, I'm teaching you that the genes are there, and that's great, but it's actually the next slide that's where I'm going to focus things. If you want to know more about the genes, we are going to be running separate webinars introducing each gene, and there is information in the collateral in the portal, which Bernie will be showing you later. Right, 8th question is, these subjectively assess gene expression. Basically, that means that your patient or client is answering how they're feeling in that moment in time, and hopefully they're being honest. You can go into the portal, by the way, and you can access all of the results and decide whether you want to show all of the results to your person that you're presenting to, or in the case that I'm going to present to you, you'll see that I focus on a couple of panels and I don't really go over everything. So you might want to adjust your practicing manner. It'll help you save time and might be a little less confusing for the person as you're going over the results. And the thing that I've noticed is sometimes our report will say that the questionnaires are great and the combined results look fantastic, but the person in front of you is practically falling off their chair. They don't have any energy, they're yellow from the toxicity. And I need you as the practitioner to understand that sometimes people are just not truthful when they're answering questions. And I'm finding that it's more the people who answer them at home on their own, and they're actually just going, oh my goodness, I have to get through all these questionnaires so I can get my results, and I'm just going to answer 0 to all of them. If you, as the practitioner, notice that the questionnaire results, because you can see the questionnaire results separately to the overall results, if you see that they're not looking right, I would encourage you to log in and do the questionnaire again with the person in front of you, and maybe give them a little bit of guidance as you go along, like encourage them to be more honest. Okay, so in my practice, DNA is pretty much a standard test because it gives me the blueprint I need to order further tests more precisely. It certainly gives me an understanding of why a person is in the state that they're in, and most importantly, it helps me to design a program that best supports them, and it decreases the unnecessary spending. I love genetic testing because it's a once-off test, never has to be repeated. The genes don't change, but their expression does. That's the take home from the first part of this, and I'm going to hand over to Bernie to do a little bit of a recap. Are you there, Bernie?
Yes, thank you. That was great, Shania. So I think that was a great introduction to the epigenetics and nutrigenomics, a nice refresher, and an introduction to the comprehensive panel. If there are any questions, you can post them up again on the live chat and we can address them. Next session we're going to be covering will be looking now into the comprehensive panel using a case study. Shania is going to be introducing Susan X. It's based on an actual patient, and we thought it would be quite an interesting case to present you as practitioners. And Shania will also be going through the additional tests that she recommends using alongside the DNA results for a case like Susan X. Shania, can I be naughty and ask you a question? Oh, where's Shania gone? Shania is still there? Shania? Oh, have we lost Shania again? Hello?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Hi.
Just a message to everyone as well. We apologize about the technology. We're trying out a brand new system this evening for the first time called Any Meetings. So, yeah, we had a few technical challenges to overcome this evening. So apologize about that. Shania, I thought maybe it's just to lead on from what you just said. So would it be advisable to do genetic tests before any other functional tests?
Hi, you're asking me when my
Yes.
baseline testing is genetic testing. I would say yes. basically because it is a blueprint that will stay with them for as long as they're patients of mine. So I might treat them for one thing, they're presenting symptoms the first time they come through to me, but in a couple of years' time, maybe they'll come to me with something else and I'll still be able to use those results. So absolutely. It's a good to which functional test to order as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shania. All right, back over to you. Thanks.
So we're going to meet Susan. I've given you a bit of history here. She's, let's call it borderline obese. She doesn't look too bad. She doesn't exercise a lot because she's in pain, although she says that she exercises 3 or more times in her questionnaire. She has a history of being a vegan, but unfortunately, that's when she gained her weight and felt unwell. So she's recently herself reintroduced eggs and fish. And she's just been diagnosed with endometriosis. And she's been on the pill for 13 years. So her endometriosis is not terrible. It's not stage 4. So it's something that there's an intervention that can happen naturally, and she's all up for that. There is a family history that concerns me of dementia and cancer. She admits to not sleeping well, and although she believes she has a healthy diet, she doesn't like drinking water and would prefer diluted juices. This doesn't really make me happy. I will rehabilitate her taste buds to get her to drink water. She has a stressful job and a demanding boss, but she says that she can manage both. Her main complaints, other than the menstrual issues, is she's fatigued. She's gained weight recently. She used to be quite lean, so she's noticed the weight gain. And because of the fatigue, she started to self-medicate, as a lot of our clients do, and started taking iron supplements, which resulted in constipation, but no change in energy. So I've jumped into the portal now. I'm not going to be showing you too much of the portal because Bernie is going to be showing you the live version of it. I'm where am I? In the health section, we're seeing that she has that borderline BMI. She's a non-smoker and her alcohol consumption is moderate. I recommended the comprehensive panel because my suspicions on her case taking were that there were issues with detoxification and methylation, definitely estrogen detoxification, and the comprehensive panel includes all of those. And if we look at the combined results, well, there's lots of severe there. These are the combined results. So this is questionnaires, how she's feeling, along with the genetic results. And again, methylation, sleep pattern, cravings, all 3 phases of toxicity, inflammation that would explain why she's a little bit sore when she exercises, and estrogen imbalances, which is not surprising because we know that she has endometriosis. In the combined results on the left-hand side, we have the questionnaire results only. So remember, this is where Susan has answered subjectively. She's telling us how she feels. And you can see that right at the bottom, thankfully, her estrogen is moderate. But if you look on the right-hand side, the combined DNA and questionnaire results, you'll see her estrogen is still severe. So there's going to be something that we need to do there. She's at the bottom in her nutrition results. We can see she's that's severe. Essentially means she's a slow metabolizer of caffeine. Her glutathione and vitamin C will need support, and she has a high need for vitamin Bs. I'm pleased to see her stress, burnout, cortisol, and weight are not bad. So it confirms what she said in her intake, where she says she's stressed, but she's managing. So it gives me hope that there's something I can do for sure. In the next tab that is in the portal, you'll see the DNA results, which I'm really just going to glance over. However, I can see that she's ApoE3, E4. This is fairly important and relevant in her case. For you as practitioners in the portal, you'll see that each gene has a name, a gene function, the result, and the result description. So when you're going through your case, if you do see something and it appears to be more relevant, pay attention to it. The next is the clinic note, which I write for everyone. So what I try and do in these clinic notes is summarize the case to a point where you can see what is important to focus on and what isn't. Obviously, I don't know the case history, so you as a practitioner can decide what's relevant in it or not. The very first bullet point on there is the fact that she's ApoE4. Most importantly, in her case, because she has the family history of dementia, E4 being one of the variants that in its E3, E4 combination is predisposing to dementia, and E4 is predisposing to Alzheimer's. And just remember, I'm using the word predisposing. It doesn't mean that the person's going to get it, but if they have a family history of it and a predisposing factor, then we definitely put in the foundations to make it stronger there. Sections 8, 9, and 10 in her report cover her poor detoxification, poor methylation, and poor estrogen detoxification. So these ones here, so we can see that the areas that I had concern with are relevant. So let's go over each section. We have her liver results, and I'm guessing that a whole bunch of you just went, oh my goodness, that's a hell of a lot of red. I'd like you to not do that, because just because there's red doesn't mean it's bad. Don't be alarmed. I, in fact, was quite relieved when I saw these results, because it meant that her symptoms made sense, and more importantly, that myself, I could do something about it nutritionally to support her. Where I'm looking at the severity of her questionnaire results, those results I expect to change over time. So you see her questionnaire results being toxicity and sleep are both severe at the moment. Those being the subjective tests are where I will also subjectively see her results changing over time. So her genes won't change, but hopefully every time she redoes those particular tests, they'll improve. So I understand that the average thought of a practitioner would be for every SNP that there is a remedy, and this is not the case practically. So if you're looking at GSTM1, GSCT1, and you're going, for that I need to treat with glutathione, MTHFR needs active folate, this isn't really the case. You look at the overall results and you go, her phase 1, which is on the right-hand side, favors poor detoxification, resulting in an increase in toxic metabolites, which is going to put a strain on the methylation pathway, and as well as the glutathione pathway, as those metabolites need to be detoxified by those phase 2 pathways. So general advice for those 3 SNPs, no matter what they look like, is to support phase 2 detoxification, especially with the aid of fiber. You don't want the conjugated nutrients or toxins to be deconjugated through gut dysbiosis or anything like that. You want sulfur-containing vegetables like cruciferous and allium vegetables. Then if we look at her intermediate results, which are in the middle, she needs a little bit of support in the form of antioxidants, but she can get most of those from her diet. You get that by eating a rainbow of colorful vegetables every meal. I could check her need for antioxidants through functional tests, for example, the organic acids. Organic acids are great because they cover detoxification and methylation as well, and I will be bringing that up again. Phase 2 detoxification on the left-hand side needs quite a bit of support. And in this case, where I normally go food first, in this case, because her toxicity and sleep questionnaires are severe, I don't believe that food alone is going to help. And I decide to order a metabolic panel to assess her liver function. There are a number of tests on the market, so my advice is when you're looking at functional tests, find ones that gel with you. You'll have to learn how to use them. So some people prefer using others over others. I just did the basic blood panel on her for a liver function test, and as we can see here, and this is no surprise at all, is her enzymes are elevated, her alkaline and ALT. GGT, we look at specifically for the need for glutathione. So that's confirming her GST deletions are definitely in need of some support. So I'm going to be giving supplementation here. Not too concerned about the rest of the results. In the methylation section, we look at the combination of the toxicity and sleep questionnaires along with the DNA, just like we did in the previous one. And for those who are new to the subject, methylation is a process where something called a methyl group, which is a carbon and 3 hydrogen atoms, so CH3, is bound to something, and it changes the structure and function of it. In biological processes, it's catalyzed by a couple of enzymes such as the MTHFR and MTHFR, which just happen to be the ones that are red on the screen in front of you. It is involved in the modification of heavy metals, so it assists with heavy metal detox, regulates protein function, the processing of RNA to DNA, the regulation of gene expression. Quite an important process. And the way I describe it to people is it's like the binding of a book that keeps the pages safe, and the pages are our genetic codes. Methylation is the thing that keeps our genes or our gene expression safe. These results, by the way, definitely mean that she would not do well as a vegan. And as we know, she didn't, because both methylation and phase 2 detoxification are amino acid dependent. And a lot of vegans don't manage to get their amino acid intake quite up to scratch. So I was really pleased that she had already included some protein in her diet. There are a few ways that you can determine whether MTHFR is expressing or not. In chronic deficiencies, there will be, in chronic deficiencies, there'll be an elevation of the mean corpuscular volume in a full blood count. That's megaloblastic or folate deficiency anemia. In organic acids in the urine, there'll be methylmalonate, and forgive me, but I'm just going to call that FIGLU for now, because there's no way my tongue is going to get around that while I have this headset on. So methylmalonate and FIGLU in organic urine organic acids. And you can see down at the bottom, she's very high for B12 and high for folic acid. And in her case, it won't be synthetic folic acid, it'll be methylfolate, just because she probably wouldn't be able to use the folic acid if it was synthetic. And then homocysteine used to be the gold standard for testing the expression of MTHFR, but unfortunately, I'm going to show you this case that I accidentally showed you a little bit of beforehand. This is a case I had a few years ago of a young girl in her early 20s who had Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, serious gut issues, terrible anxiety, and general failure to thrive. Chronic low homocysteine. We couldn't get that level up. And we did a genetic test eventually and found out she was compound heterozygous. And amongst other things, she also had the CBS, which was upregulating transsulfuration. And I'm sorry if you don't understand what that means. But essentially, through the genetic testing, we understood why her homocysteine was low, even though she had the MTHFRs. And once we managed to correct her gut flora, and NTHFR 1298 is predisposed to dysbiosis. And once we managed to figure that out and fix that, she is now thriving. She became a professional bodybuilder. In this case, I'm going to show you why you don't treat the SNPs without testing first. The test results above are of a professional athlete that I was treating a few years back. He came to me with fatigue. He wasn't winning the medals he wanted to. Treated him, got to the point where he was really just maintaining through diet and lifestyle, keep making sure he was toxin avoiding, etc., etc. He then, as a lot of our clients do, heard about the next best thing in nutritional therapists and went to go see them, and they took one look at the results and said, no, you have to be on methylated B vitamins. And unfortunately, he had a major reaction to them, in that if you take too many methylated B vitamins and you downregulate the COMT, you stop breaking down adrenaline. So his reaction was immediate. The immediate downregulation of COMT from these over excessive methyl donors. And I had to give him quite a high dose of niacin in order to get him to not be as anxious and hostile as he was. So I'm bringing up that whole susceptibility to over-methylate because COMT is one of the things that will predispose you to it, but VDR attack is the other. And in the past, I used to have to calculate who's got what and in what variations so that I didn't accidentally over-methylate them. And I just want to say that in our reports, we actually do that for you. We detail how well a person will handle methyl donors so that you don't need to do the calculations or make the trial and error mistakes and possibly aggravate your person. In this case, Susan can handle methyl donors, so she gets them in the end. Right, estrogen. Not as bad as I was thinking it would be. So the way I've been looking at these results is methylation and detoxification so far have been the areas that have piqued my interest the most. Her toxicity is coming up, obviously, again, as severe. Her estrogen, the questionnaire results were moderate, and her weight and cortisol are really good. Now, the reason we put weight and cortisol in is because if you are chronically stressed and you don't have the ability to make cortisol over its natural mechanisms, what it will do is it'll steal from progesterone. So that can often exacerbate an estrogen dominant state. So stress steals from progesterone to make cortisol, and then you get that imbalance of estrogen to progesterone. We want to look at making sure that she metabolizes in a way that is healthy. We want to get the best forms of estrogens in her so you can get the good, the bad, and the ugly forms of estrogen metabolites. And we want to make sure that her body is making the good rather than the bad and the ugly. And you can functionally test for each one of those metabolites. But in this case, because her overall picture is not looking too bad for me right now, I didn't do that. It's an expensive test. I was more concerned over her overall estrogen dominance than her immediate risk for, say, cancer or something like that. So we can see she has slightly elevated estrogen, and more importantly, her progesterone estrogen ratio is low. So we need to get that up because she's going to be in an estrogen dominant state regardless. And I was quite pleased to see her cortisol correlated to her intake and her questionnaires. Her thyroid is also functioning well. I was really happy about that. So it's important to understand the status of these SNPs is not the same as measuring urinary, salivary, or blood levels of estrogen. Those really need to be assessed separately. So if you're looking at a case and they've got a genetic potential for something, or even if they don't and they're presenting as it, it's a good idea to check functionally separately. What the estrogen gene SNPs tell us is basically what's on file. And this code can then be supported or manipulated through lifestyle and, where necessary, supplementation. So for an absolutely truly holistic evaluation, we must understand all of the factors that influence the expression of our genes. And more importantly nowadays, it's sleep, stress, and definitely nutrition. I'm going to drum home the point, especially when it comes to estrogen screening, is that it's not diagnostic of any disease. You can't look at a genetic profile and say you have endometriosis or you have cancer or any of those things. It's not diagnosis. None of the genetic testing is diagnostic of any disease. It'll give you insight into the inherited tendencies of estrogen-related enzymes, but again, you'd have to check the expression. It's very useful in helping to construct individualized nutritional programs. That's where it gets its gold star. So I've included in your handouts that Bernie will be able to give you this particular article that is from 2001. So that's how long we've been understanding estrogen metabolism and the effect of certain nutrients on it. There is 15 years of research since this, so I encourage you to spend some time on Google and have a look and see what else there is. But the take home of this is improving estrogen metabolism can be a benefit in women with various conditions and family histories, including a family history of breast, uterine, or ovarian cancer and conditions such as endometriosis, which is exactly what we're looking at, premenstrual syndrome, uterine fibroid tumors, fibrocystic or painful breast, cervical dysplasia, and SLE. In addition, many nutrients effectively reduce estrogen load by supporting preferred pathways and estrogen metabolism. That's essentially why we run these tests. I really encourage you to take the time to read this research or this article. It's by Douglas Hall, published in the Applied Nutritional Science Reports in 2001. And have a look at page 4, where it goes into details of which nutrients specifically assist estrogen detoxification. It's quite a fun page. Right. She mentioned in her intake that she exercised infrequently. She said 3 or more times a week, but on interrogation, it was a little less. And the reason was because she was in pain. So we look at her predisposition to inflammation, and that's pretty bad. There's a questionnaire is severe, and 2 of the 3 genes are severe. So she needs education on the fact that eating pro-inflammatory foods could possibly flare up inflammation, and sleep. Sleep has been shown to turn off over 700 pro-inflammatory genes. So sleep rehabilitation in this case is almost more important than giving her supplementation. She really needs to learn how to sleep. The next thing is introducing some exercise, maybe swimming or gentle cycling, something that doesn't trigger an inflammatory response like maybe jogging would. How we test gene expression: you can test using C-reactive protein. You can do it either as CRP or as its HSCRP. You can look at ESR, which is the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, and ferritin. Ferritin is actually a marker for inflammation as well. It's not just an iron store. And we saw from her nutrition that I showed you in the combined results that she does actually need quite a bit of support at the moment. The test-to-test expression are things like organic acids, hair analysis, and urine analysis. I obviously did an organic acid, but I was also curious to see how she was dealing with heavy metals specifically. I was thinking that with her particular symptoms, that she may not be able to detox things like copper, which is directly related to estrogen. It's the female mineral, and zinc being the male. I'm thinking mercury also has a big role in endometriosis. So let me look at her hair and see what happens when I get those results. And for those who haven't seen a hair analysis before, copper is the one, I think it's smack bang in the middle. And if you look at zinc, which is 2 down from copper, zinc, when it's elevated in a hair analysis, especially when the copper is elevated, indicates that it's being displaced. So it indicates a need. Also, her calcium is at 558, and calcium and copper have a fairly direct agonistic relationship where they'll kind of go up and down together. So all of that's confirming that she is in fact copper toxic. So it's not so much her estrogen detoxification that's her problem, but her detoxification in general, her ability to methylate and use the glutathione to bind to heavy metals to get rid of the estrogenic effect. So let's look here. We have second from the left, she has elevated mercury. Again, that's way off the charts. It ends at 0.45 and hers is at 0.516. So that's really very high mercury. I would look at the sources. Don't eat tuna. If you've got mercury amalgams, those will probably need to be removed. If you live near a refinery, you might have to move. There's also aluminium. Almost everyone I test has aluminium in them these days because it is one of the most prolific metals on the face of the planet, and it just seems to be in everything. Nickel as well, so I'm not surprised to see that there. So to get on to what do I do with Susan? Well, according to her results from the DNA, the recommended plan is a low toxin and then a low sugar healthy fat plan. I'm sure none of you are surprised by that. She definitely needs to detox before we do anything with her. So getting onto a low toxin plan is priority. I generally get people to do it for about 30 days, and then I retest the questionnaire, and depending on how they're doing, I might push it a little bit more, but they get a bit complaining after that. We looked at low sugar healthy fat. I mentioned she had the APO E3, E4 variant. So E4 doesn't do well on high saturated fats. So they definitely need good fats, but they need to be good fats. She came up as one of her severe things was low sugar. She does have a homozygous PPARG, so she will eventually, as her maintenance, go on to the low sugar healthy fat plan. Exercise, cardio, and strength. So any exercise right now would be great, and then she can go and do a little bit of weight training along with her spinning when she's a little bit stronger. And the supplement recommended is detox for absolutely no surprise, because that's the pathway. This particular supplement supports methylation, but not in a way that will over methylate. It's very gentle. In people who can handle methyl donuts, I often give the methylated B vitamins as an added to this one. But if people who can't, and you'll see in the reports whether they can or cannot handle methyl donuts, if it expressly says somebody can't handle methyl donuts, this is a fantastic formula because it supports methylation, just not the long cycle. It supports the short cycles. It's got the trimethylglycine and things like that in it. Okay. Additional advice, and this might not just be for Susan, this would be for pretty much everyone, I think, is ensure good gut health. So when I take on a case, usually in the time that I see them to the time where I get the results, I'm already doing my gut foundation work, which I'm sure a lot of you do already. In her case, inflammation, not so much stress management, but some stress management, and definitely sleep rehabilitation, teaching her how to get her 8 hours of sleep. Her diet needs to contain adequate protein, and as an ex-vegan, that takes a little bit of rehabilitation. She needs lots of leafy greens. That's where we get our nutritional folate from. Cruciferous and alien vegetables and fiber will support phase 2 detoxification. Definitely toxin avoidance wherever you can. I tend to joke with my patients that if somebody lights up a cigarette, they must run away from them. But that's a little extreme. She should preferably come off the pill. There is that fear factor that she had of dysmenorrhea. But the use of the supplements, dysmenorrhea and endometriosis respond very well to detoxification. They really do. And most people, we don't know why endometriosis happens. There are a few theories behind it. I definitely think that there's a link between copper detoxification. But I think it's also that your stem cells get bombarded with this message that they need to be producing or need to be in an environment that has estrogen in it. So they just pop up as uterine cells. And then when you take that signal away from them, they tend to get better. So there is often an improvement, and that is just a theory. But there is often an improvement by improving detoxification, getting that copper and mercury down, generally supporting the glutathione and methylation, definitely improves the symptoms that she came in with, and will help with the prevention of any of her predisposing factors of dementia and cancer as well. She'll be on the supplements until there's an improvement in her results. That's her blood results, her hair results, her urine results, and her questionnaire results. She's been told to exercise even a little bit, so even 30 minutes of moderate exercise is better than none. And in her case, in addition to the diet, lifestyle, and the detox supplement I gave her, I did give her additional zinc because it is the antagonist of copper. She got methylated B vitamins, and I gave her adrenal support just because detoxing without adrenal support tends to cause aggravation. So that was my basic outline for her. I hope I've drummed this point in that genes are just a part of the clinical picture. You really need to, as holistic practitioners, take everything into account. I'm going to hand back over to Bernie. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and I didn't go too fast or too loud or too soft. The sound.
Okay, hi. Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Shania. So we're on the final stretch now. Just a few questions, Shania. I thought we could take them now. There was a question that came in about where does someone find their reactivity to methyl donors? So where would they actually find this? The answer is really in your clinic note. So you actually pointing that out in the clinic note. If everyone's happy, I will do a quick tour of, so I'm just going to change screens for a sec and just take you offline, and we'll just quickly get into the practitioner portal. All right, so what I'm showing you now, let me just get rid of that for a sec, is the practitioner portal. So this is the dashboard when you first log in, and how you log in would be from the main website for those that haven't logged in yet. And this is the dashboard. And each of these little tiles is a quick navigation. So I'm going to quickly take you through how do you actually access Susan X's results. Okay, so you could either do it through your client reports or your client list or my clients. Okay, so the way I use it is I go through my client list, and you can see Susan X. For me, this is actually quite a helpful quick dashboard for you as well, because you can clearly see Amit hasn't completed all of his questionnaires, and I will show you how you can actually trigger off that questionnaire link or do it in-house with your client. Okay, so let's pull up Susan X. Okay, so the first thing you see with Susan is a status of her swab. So you follow through the swab journey as well. So at any stage, you can always contact the practitioner support team, or if you just want to log in and have a quick look, and then you also view the report. That's how you actually get the report link. And this is the PDF that gets loaded up. And you can see the very detailed clinical note that Shania has been talking about, okay? And it goes into each of the sections that we're testing. Okay, so her quick health overview all on screen for you. For me, this is the important menu item here. It's the combined and the clinic note, and then you can have a quick view of the DNA results. So with the combined, it's showing you all of these questionnaires. And when your client actually updates the questionnaire, so you're doing a follow-up with them, depending on what their requirements are. So for example, in this particular case is a toxicity. So we would want her to redo a toxicity questionnaire. You will see the updated result coming live in your practitioner portal. Okay, so let's just have a look quickly. How do you actually view these results? You can just click the estrogen, for example. Shania's taken us through this, and you can see it's all nice in your screen, one screen view. And very shortly, we'll actually be having the print friendly, so you can print these pages off. So hopefully this will make it easier than printing off the long PDF report. You can just print off the sections you need for your client follow-up consultation. And each of these sections is actually built in that it's pulled from the client report as well. Okay, this is a quick snapshot of the DNA results as well, all live in your portal. We've gone through this already. So your gene name, gene function, the result, and the allele description as well. And then this is the clinic note. Again, we're going to make this print friendly. There's been requests to make it print friendly, so you could take that to your consult meeting as well. And then the final menu item would be the diet and exercises that we're actually recommending. So in Susan's case was the low toxin, okay? And then once we're happy with the toxicity and her sleep, we can then move on to her low sugar, healthy fat plan. And she's been recommended the cardio and strength exercise. And then also we will recommend the supplements, and Shania has decided that she will give the detox. She'll recommend the detox to her client. So it's entirely up to you on what you actually do with the recommendations. Okay, so the next question is, how do you actually access the technical materials and the diet and exercise? So let's start with the diet and exercise. Okay, so it's all the dietary guidelines, which is the copy that you will find in your client report. So let's get the low toxin guidelines. So these guidelines have been put together as boilerplate for you as a practitioner. Now you can use as is, or you can download it, you can tailor it, or if you have your own version of a low toxin, by all means use that as well. So they're just prepared as tools for you as a practitioner. Okay. The same as there's some sample menus, and there's also the exercise plans as well. Okay, so the next question we get asked is how do I get my client to take the questionnaires or retake the questionnaires? So all you need to do is down the left column, or again use the main dashboard that I was showing you earlier. So we can go back there. Okay, and here's a list of your client questionnaires. Okay. So we want Susan, so I'll take myself in this instance. So you want Bernie to redo her questionnaire. So you can either email the questionnaire and you just click the link and you would send it. and that's it. And it's confirming the email address as well. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Or you decide, actually, I want to do this in-house with Bernie. So let's do this quickly in-house with Bernie. So you just do the questionnaire, and I'm straight in Bernie's questionnaire results. So let's view her sleep questionnaire. And it's severe. So this is an area that we've asked her, or we're going to redo this questionnaire with her. So retake, and she's feeling better. So we're improving this result, and Bernie's answering all these questions. Okay, and hit submit. So straight away, this gets updated in your portal, and the client can see the results immediately. So let's view. So great, it's moved to healthy. So good way to keep track of your client's progress. Okay, the next question we get asked, how do I actually access, or how do I allocate the DNA swabs? Well, the first thing you need to do is if you don't have any swabs, you need to actually request your kits. So we ship 5 kits out to you, and we allocate the swabs to your account. And that's all you do. You just hit submit, and it goes to the practitioner support team. Okay, so the kits will then get shipped out to you, and we allocate the swabs, as you do there, to your account. Okay. So on the side of the DNA test kit is the swab number. So in this case, it's 420032. And inside the kit is actually a sticker that goes on the DNA swab vial. And that gets shipped back to our lab. Okay, so quite easy. So let's allocate this swab. At this stage, you need to decide if you will pay as a practitioner, which is the trade price, or the client will pay. And that's all you need to do. Okay, and then you just register the swab. Okay, so it's the client's first name, surname, and then the email address, and then you select the panel that you've ordered for them. So in this case would be the comprehensive, and you hit submit, and that's all you need to do. This then triggers off the email to the client, the questionnaire email, because in this case you are paying trade price. Okay, so all the client gets then system driven will be the email. If the client's paying, then they will get the payment instruction with the questionnaire link. And that's all you need to do. Okay. Now, you can access the technical materials in the portal as well. So we've got the gene description. So this includes the allele results and the function and each of the panels. We've also got all the supplement sheets. So it's got all the nutrients in there. The ingredients together with some support explaining the function of each of those ingredients. We have some sample reports in the portal as well. There's some technical resources you can use. We've got the methylation cycle diagram. You could print it out, stick it up in your practice. There's also the new avatar image with all the areas that we're testing, which I think will be quite useful to explain to your client if they're asking you what are all the areas that you're actually assessing as well. And then, of course, all the educational materials are in the portal as well, together with marketing collateral. So that's a quick tour of the practitioner portal. So the best is to just get into the portal, have a play around. I will certainly send out a recording and with instructions. We've got some help guides that's going to be going into the portal very shortly. Don't forget the help and resources we've built up here. So you've got lots of FAQs in there. Okay, so there's FAQs about the genes, for example. Okay, so they're all in there. So yeah, have a look around. Any questions, always, come to the practitioner support team. I think that's it, everyone. I think we'll call the meeting to a close now because of timing. And we will try and get a new recording out to everyone. So again, apologies again for the poor sound this evening. And we hope you enjoyed it. We will send out some of the questions and answers as well, together with the handouts. So I hope you found that useful. Thank you so much for spending the time with us this evening. And I think that's it. All right, so we'll say goodnight to everyone. And again, thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening.